Hello Elliott, hello Hog. So I wanted to start with the origins of the band. So how was the band formed and what was your motivation behind it?
The band formed back in 2011. It formed out of boredom because we were just bored. So there's three brothers in the band. There's me, and then Sam, the lead singer, and then Zach, lead guitarist. So, you know, we're brothers, we grew up together, played music, but not together ever really. It was just we'd play music in our bedrooms as a hobby kind of thing, and then never thought that it would be a kind of a career, something to do as a job. But eventually I was in high school, finishing school. Sam and Zach were working in bars and crappy jobs and didn't like their jobs, and so decided to jam with each other one day. And then asked me to jam with them, and I did. And then we started writing songs, and then needed a drummer, so called our mate Scotty, who played drums. He wanted to jam, and then eventually Will joined as well and played bass. It was pretty much just like a falling into place kind of thing. It was never the plan to, all right, let's kickstart this thing and start a band. It was really just out of boredom and for fun, really. And now we get to do it as a job, which is awesome.
And you just mentioned boredom like twice. Does the fact that you come from a really small town, does this fact influenced your forming of the band?
I don't think that. I suppose it does for a lot of bands, because you need some kind of outlet, and you find a lot of country towns fall into drugs or something like that because they don't have anything to, keep themselves entertained. So you go down certain paths, and so some people go into art or music or just find a path to entertain yourself. But you can be bored anywhere. You can be bored in major cities. So it's not really, I take that with a little bit of a grain of salt when people say that, because I know a lot of people who live in major cities that live boring lives. So, I think that we're lucky that we did have some kind of outlet and chose a creative path.
It's also a cool thing to do when you're in a small town, because you don't know really you don't grow up knowing bands or seeing live music very much in your hometown, so it's kind of like a cool thing for you to be able to do because no one else is doing it.
Or it's exciting to start a band and then go, oh, maybe one day we can play a gig in the city.
Yeah,
and
I think that's the big thing.
Like you've made it to go and play in the city that you come from. So
it's all
boredom.
Dreams and boredom.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's kind of a common interest, but also a wish to have an audience, to play for an audience in a bigger city.
Yeah,
it's fun. Yeah, and were both of you guys raised in musical families, like your parents?
Yeah, our family, we didn't like play music together as a family, but our mum plays piano. Our dad doesn't play anything, but we were always encouraged to get lessons, and sometimes we hated it and quit and then would come back to it eventually. What about you? Did you get...
Not really, but there was always music being played in the household, like old records, like Led Zeppelin or any of that sort of stuff. But I remember the reason why I got into music was because there was a cover of Sunshine of Your Love by Eric Clapton. So there was a song being played, and then on the radio, and my dad said, oh, there's an awesome guitarist called Jimi Hendrix, and he's got a version of it too. And he put that record on, and I remember it sounded so different, and the way the guitar was, just as a child, I was like, I didn't know you could play the same song differently, like someone's attitude could affect the song. So I remember thinking, oh, that's a really cool, the way that sounds and what the guitar's doing is really cool. And then...
I never heard that story. That's a cool story.
So then the next week or something, I got guitar lessons, and so I was, music.
Always music in the house, and
always.
Music in the car, and... but not like none of us can read music. None of us are trained really musicians. It's just more something we've done out of the love for it and the hobby for it, kind of thing.
Yeah. And once you were growing up, were you listening to music constantly? I mean, well, you just mentioned Jimi Hendrix and the story of your dad. But after that, when you were in your teens, this is what I mean. Were you like exposed to music all the time?
Well, that's what happens. Like, you know, like there's big trends that happen in music. So like for me, it was like that 90s thing of like Nirvana, Seattle sound, like Red Hot Chili Peppers, all that sort of stuff, the 90s. And then you kind of get over it, then you start to look for something else. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, exactly. Because actually, when I was reading about your story and when you mentioned boredom, it kind of reminded me of Seattle, you know. And then now you're mentioning all those bands. Yeah,
yeah, of course.
And did you have any influence of Australian bands?
I guess there would be like there's classic Australian bands that everyone grows up knowing or listening to, like Powderfinger. I don't know if you've heard them.
No.
Classic like pub rock kind of Australian band. I don't know, outside of that, in our house we didn't listen to a lot of Australian music. Mainly like Fleetwood Mac and Van Morrison and stuff. R.E.M. we listened to a lot of.
I think it was harder back then because now there's not so much like Australian music because the internet and it's so easy to get music to and fro. But back then, before the internet, it's like you had what they call like pub rock. So it was an Australian kind of rock and roll that bands would just play through all the pubs. So you kind of inspired to be like that. Like this is like 80s and 90s. So there was that. I was influenced by a lot of those bands because Triple J and Australian radio stations would play that kind of music. But I think now it's changed as in, again, like I was saying, the internet and information can be thrown. Australia doesn't really have a genre anymore.
Yeah, you can get music from anywhere, anywhere around the world, really.
It's not until actually coming to Europe where there's still, say if you go to islands, like they have their folk music and the music they've grown up through without, you know, generations, where that still influences some kind of music here. Where Australia is such a new country, there is no real culture. Like we don't have a Australian folk kind of music. So it's, which is interesting to be in Europe and still find those influences in modern music, which is really cool. Is
there an example that you can give?
There was one band I've been listening called The Villagers.
The Villagers.
I think I'm pretty sure they come from Ireland and they're still folky, but they have like a rocky modern thing going on. So I'm constantly looking for music like that too, because after a while of playing these festivals and things, music seems like it kind of all blends into, like we're saying, Seattle had a sound, Seattle scene or the 90s scene, and now it's very broad. But personally, I want to go back in time and go to like Mediterranean beats and things like that they've had that I don't think modern music's really experimented with enough. I think there's, so I'm going a bit off track here, but sorry, anyway.
Some weirdness,
No, but I was just thinking while you were talking that maybe, do you miss like having a scene as an identity, as a shared identity? Because the way that you were saying it kind of sounded to me like that everything now blends into,
100%.
you know what I mean?
Well, kind of, you know, there's still scenes, like you've got the metal scene, you know, which is big here. It's not so big back at home, but there still is a scene. But there is no like real big like funk, like there's a funk scene or like a Motown scene and all these kind of great genres. Like you're saying before, it's kind of all blended into one. So I kind of miss that a little bit. But then there's also something that's cool with that is that there's all these genres blended into one kind of music. So it creates a whole new thing as well.
I think it's also because like people can listen to everything now as well. You can listen to anything on your phone. So people aren't like tied down to one or two genres as that being their favourite type of music.
And you'd be more influenced too, because you have such a range of music.
You just go through your iPod and it'll be hip-hop and then it'll be folk and then it'll be rock and it'll be pop or whatever, but like it's all there, and so people don't feel like they have to be tied down to I'm a rock and roll person kind of thing. It's all there in the palm of your hand, and you can listen to whatever you want, whenever you want.
And when you were forming the band, did you have in mind, like, I want to play this kind of music or that one, or it just, when you actually started playing, or it just happened naturally?
I think we're always going to be a rock band, but we didn't plan out our sound at all. It was kind of like, well, Sam plays guitar, Zach plays guitar, I play keys, and then we played together and see what happens, and that was the sound, and from there it just kind of made sense. Like at the time though, we were listening to a lot of blues, a lot Black Keys as well. They had a couple of records out at that time that we were listening to a lot of, which probably influenced us, yeah. But we didn't ever like sit down and say, let's be this type of band. It was just kind of whatever made sense really, and music that we liked.